So the meeting is recording now. And as I told you, today we are going to talk about listening and speaking, 2 skills of 4 language skills. But before starting, we have a warm-up. Let me see how good you are in guessing. I'm going to pause the recording right now. Recording again. So we are going to discover receptive and productive skills first, and then listening and speaking. So what's the difference between receptive and productive skills? Anybody knows?
Yes, can I say?
Yeah.
So as names show, the receptive is something that we receive and we're going to understand for reading, like reading and listening, and productive is like for speaking and writing. So to produce a message in a written form or orally. So that's the meaning of these 2 words, which are really important for learning your language, either a second or as a foreign language.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So, as your friend said, receptive skills, the skills that you get the knowledge, productive skill, when you get the feedback, you produce it. Okay, it's a production. So basically, we can say through listening and reading, your students get the knowledge. They listen to the language, no matter what, and they read it. So they learn about that language. So how can you understand and learn it when you get the output through productive skills like speaking and listening? So is it possible, guys? You can even type in the chat box because I can see the chat. Is it possible that you only teach listening or only teach reading?
No, they are all related to each other.
Yeah, exactly. Say, why do we call them? Why do we call them integrated skills?
Because they are integrated.
Mm-hmm. Can you give me an example?
Because they are intertwined.
Can you give me an example?
Yeah, I mean, for example, if you don't understand the listening, definitely you cannot speak. It's a two-way road. Both of them are related to each other. I mean all 4 of them are related to each other. So without speaking, definitely there is no reading. Without writing, definitely there is no reading. So I think all of them are, together. They are integrated.
Thank you.
Give examples.
Thank you very much. Very good. Very good. Anybody else wanted to say something?
I just wanted to say something about the whole language, because the whole language consists of 4 skills, like reading, writing, listening, and speaking. But I've had this experience in my students that they are able to listen, but they are not able to produce and just in oral, they're not able to speak. That's a problem, that they can understand everything, but they are not able to produce it.
Why do you think it happens, Zahra? Why do you think it happens?
As long as I have experience in here, there hasn't been enough context for them to just talk in English, and they are afraid of coming out of their comfort zone. So they are embarrassed to say something which might be wrong, and they are afraid of making a mistake. Or they might, because in English in Iran is taught as a foreign language, so there's not enough context for them to talk, to speak, and then to produce something which they have in their mind. So so all practicing in speaking, and so as I told you, but in the way that I'm teaching in my class, I'm using the whole language or social cultural theory in order to just put them in exposure of enough input for English, and I ask them to just produce something either in written form and orally, because I've told them that there's a close relationship between writing and speaking, because they have enough time to just produce something, and they can use that information and those things that they have written in the spoken form of the language.
Thank you.
That's what I have experienced.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Zahra. We are going to discuss it in another webinar, why it happens. They are very good in writing, but not in speaking. Or they have the knowledge, but they cannot produce it. We're going to discuss it in another webinar, but actually you yourself mentioned some of the reasons. So basically, when we teach a language, all the skills are integrated. Okay, we're going to focus on each because to understand it better and know which parts we need to practice with our students. But keep in mind, there's interactions between all. So when you give them input to your students and when they learn something, the only way that you can understand, they learn it when they produce it. So you need to get the feedback through writing and speaking, okay? Keeping this in mind, we are going to discuss why listening is very important in learning language.
Because of the input that
Can
you're
you raise
providing.
your hand so that I know how many people want to answer? There's an option. Yeah, thank you. Yes, Vianney.
I'm guessing because if we are trying to speak or learn a different language, we are going to repeat whatever we are listening. The proper pronunciation.
Yes, exactly, especially on pronunciation. Anybody else wants to say something?
No, that's it.
Oh, okay. So how do you learn your first language? How do you learn your first language? I mean, remember babies. How do they learn the first language?
They acquire the language.
Yeah, how?
From the mother, from the parents, from...
Yes, do they go to any classes?
No, definitely.
Through?
To listening.
Yeah.
Exactly, through listening. So that is the natural way of learning a language, through listening. Okay? So when we have a lot of exposure, as Zahra told you, I mean, Zahra was talking and it said because in her country, people don't have the exposure so that they cannot speak. Because people who speak well normally listen well. So if you prepare lots of exposure for your students, you help them to speak better. As Vianney said, they even can learn the stress, intonation, and pronunciation. It's not only vocabulary. So to begin for teaching a language, the very first thing is preparing lots of exposure to the listening, to the level of your students. For beginners, for intermediate, and even advanced students. So according to the level, it's good to prepare lots of listening podcasts, movies, cartoons, or even different recording to help them to speak better. And there is another fact. When you send a message and receiver get it, so they have lots of exposure to the listening, and they listen to different podcasts. How can you understand they learn? When you get the feedback. So you need to think of exercises according to that listening. We're going to discuss what kind of exercises. But before that, do you know what is active listening? Anybody knows what is active listening?
I will say probably where your intention is really focused on whatever the other person is saying. Because sometimes when we are listening, we just listen, but we don't recall what the conversation is about.
Yeah.
Thank you.
The other one is kind of passive listening, we don't get maybe anything, or maybe it's not intentionally, maybe we are listening something intentionally, or I mean, we want to find something out of it. It's a kind of active listening. Otherwise, it's passive.
Very good idea. So when you listen to radio or TV news, is it active or passive?
It can be both, I guess.
Can you talk to the reporter?
Oh, I mean, when it's, oh, no. So definitely it's passive.
Yes.
All right.
Active listening, it means when you yourself do something for that listening.
Oh, yeah. I didn't know.
Okay? So
Yeah.
you as a teacher can get the feedback, like doing exercises, answering to the questions, writing the summary, talking about it. That is active listening. Otherwise, as Ida said, it's just passive. You heard something, even you can remember, but that's it. That's it, nothing more. So you need to check with your students. You need to check that with your student. If they understand the message, they receive the message, they understand it, and they can remember, and also they can respond. So you need to evaluate your students. How it is possible? How it is possible to evaluate your student? Through
their speaking.
Or writing. Exactly.
Yeah.
Through their speaking or writing. So we check with our students. Have they received the message? Do they understand the aim of that listening? And then can they remember and talk about it? Can they use the vocabulary? Can they use the structure? Can they produce it correctly with correct stress and pronunciation? And can they respond? Okay? Maybe their listening is like an interview. Can they role play the interview or answer to the questions? So you evaluate your students. When you plan for your lesson, think about all. So that is why we said we need general comprehension questions and then detailed questions. General is just checking they receive the main idea. They understand it. Then you go through the detailed one. There are different kinds of listening. It maybe it's a sound like So what it means? When you say what is that? What it means to you?
Means yes or wow.
Understandable.
Oh yes, understand. Even I think it is delicious. Yeah. And you need the
Nice.
gestures too. Yeah. Yes, you need the gestures too. So even sound is meaning in language. Okay? Tones, intonation. Accent is not that much important anymore from 2000, but it should be understandable. So what we practice with our students is the stress, correct the stress of the word. No matter what language you speak, each word has a stress. In Turkish, in Persian, in German, and in English, I'm sure even in Japanese. Yes, am I right, Eileen? So,
Yeah.
so there's a stress for a word. How to practice it? We're going to have a session, how to teach speaking in details, conversation and dialogues. We're going to practice how you teach stress. But keep in mind, stress of the word and stress of a sentence. We have stress of the word and stress of a sentence. What is the stress of a sentence? Like I ask you, where do you teach? And I say, I teach in Toronto. So you put a stress on
Teach.
where do you teach? I teach in
Where?
Toronto.
Toronto.
Toronto, exactly, because this is the answer for where. But then I said, what do you do? You say, I teach in Toronto. So the stress is on
Teach.
teach. Very good. When I ask you, how long have you been teaching? Teaching in Toronto for 3 years. So the stress is on
3 years.
3 years. That is very important. That makes it more natural and understandable. So you put the stress on a word in a sentence, which is exactly the direct answer to the question. So that's why we need to practice with our students. And then we check the meaning and reacting. You know, facial expressions, gestures is very important in language. Gestures are different in different languages, but they are meaningful. So their reaction and how natural they speak is also important. They shouldn't speak like robots. And talk. So where do you teach? I teach in Toronto. How long have you been teaching? I've been teaching for 3 years. That's not very understandable. So even you work through gestures. How can you teach the gestures of a language? What do you think? I mean, we have different gestures, like in English, call me. I don't think so.
But you mean
So
body
different
language?
gestures. How do you teach it? Yes. What did you say? Somebody say something. I missed it. How do you practice, guys? Teaching? Gestures? I believe somebody say something. Did I
I
miss?
think it was Zahra.
Oh, Zahra?
Yeah, it's a
Okay.
body language. It's a body language which is important in teaching.
Yes. So how can you teach body language to your students? Because body language, I'm sure body language in Persian is different from English. So how do you practice it?
Just by comparing the Persian and English, for example, there's a big difference between saying no in English and in Persian. In Persian, we say no, but in English, we say no. So that should be confusing for the students to understand the meaning of no. Just I mean, that's waving
You're right.
the head from the left, right. So and basically I prefer just based on the cartoon animation or any movies, based on the group of students that I'm teaching them, I work on the gestures of the body language of the persons who are playing in those for example movies. So and then I compare them with the Persian language. But comparing, I've got very good result that the students can understand the body language of English and the difference between these two.
Okay, thank you. That's very good. One way is you just mention it. You can mention it to adults actually. The other way is teacher. I mean, you yourself use the correct body language in the class because your students imitate you. And other thing is watching movies, podcasts, videos. They help. It helps them a lot. It helps them a lot. Thank you. Thank you very much. So, what kind of activities you can give to your students? You can give them charts. Just listen and fill in the charts. Ask questions before they're listening. Just get them prepared to focus on the main idea. Showing them pictures and just ask them to order the pictures based on the audio. Discussing the topic first. Prepare your students. We need to prepare our students to concentrate better. So you said discuss the topic first, then ask them some question. After that, you play the audio for them. You can describe the context, but we never give all the detail for the context to the students because there's nothing else there's nothing left to listen to. So you can talk about the context, just get your student familiar with the context, but then leave it to them. Role playing the situation could be another activity. So they listen like to an interview and I ask them to take notes. Then in their pairs, they practice that role playing and interview each other. To prepare for that role play, we need to pre-teach the keywords first because they have to learn the words first, then they can run the dialogue. Brainstorming is also another activity you can have for your listening to prepare your students for the audio. And prediction. So while you're playing the audio, you can stop it and say, okay, can you guess what happened next? So in this case, you can check with your students if they have understood the listening so far. Otherwise, they cannot predict, So prediction is another thing. And follow-ups, like they compare it to their real life, and they say, is it similar to their own situation or how different it is after listening to the audios? So we can get involved the students before, while, and after for the listening activity. So sometimes they listen and they just tell you the gist of that listening. What was the aim, or what was the message? That's reactive. Intensive is like they need to find some specific answer, like fill in the blanks. Fill in the blanks. So they have to focus and fill in the blanks. Like IELTS example, IELTS listening part, they have to find a specific answer to fill in the blanks or answer to the questions. Responsive is like they listen and they answer immediately to your questions, like general comprehension questions. Or selective, so they can scan the material for specific information. Extensive listening, we are going to talk about top-down and bottom-up. So extensive is kind of listening that focus on top-down activities. But intensive was top-down and bottom-up. So let me ask you, do you know what is top-down and bottom-up? Do you have any idea?
I don't.
Okay, top-down approach and bottom-up approach. When your students, so let me put it in this question. When your students listen to the audio, do you check? What do you check with your students? So you play the audio, you put them in the context, you play the audio, then what do you check with your students?
If they understood what the audio was about?
So you check their comprehension, yes?
Yeah.
That is top-down approach.
From the,
That is top-down approach. Top-down approach is a part that you check their comprehension. You had a brainstorming, your students get familiar with the context, they then listen to the listening, and after that you ask some general or even detailed questions and ask if they've understood it, if they've got the message. That is top-down approach.
so I'm going to say from,
I'm sorry?
let's say from details to the whole, and then from top down of the whole to details, and bottom up from the details to the whole.
It could be, but just be a bit more exact. Top down is working on comprehension. But is that all? You only work on comprehension all of the time? Or sometimes something else is important too?
Yeah, sometimes we focus on the exact word.
Bravo. Not for all listening, but in some listenings, you want to work on linguistic part. Because it's input, yes? Input knowledge, receptive. So they need to learn vocabulary. They need to learn, what else they need to learn? Grammar. Sometimes you need to practice grammar. What else?
Pronunciation, maybe?
Pronunciation, bravo. What else?
Cultural points of the text.
Yes, different, yeah, it could be different parts of the sentence. And stress, intonation, tone, yeah. So they have to learn that part too. So this approach is bottom up. So when you work on comprehension is top-down approach. When you work on linguistic work, it's bottom-up approach. Okay?
Yeah. So can I ask a question?
Sure, go ahead.
Actually, I had no idea about this, but when I was reading the Canvas, I just, knew about top down and bottom up. In general, can I say which one is better, or no, you cannot compare them?
It depends on the aim of your class.
Oh, yeah. So sometimes
For example, for children classes, we usually work on top down. For children classes or for lower level, adolescents and adult, beginners, elementary, we usually work on top down more than bottom up. But when they get to higher levels, so they need to learn to words, phrases, curriculum, different parts of the sentence. So look to everything. So you have to work on bottom up too.
Bottom up. Oh yeah, thank you.
Both are necessary. Both
Yeah.
are necessary. And what is extensive listening? Can you give you an example for extensive listening?
Extensive. I have no idea.
So maybe a presentation about something specific.
Um, I heard that sometimes it can be for joy, not just getting, everything, every detail.
Intensive.
Extensive, I guess. Yeah,
Yeah,
I don't know.
Extensive. So
Oh, you say
extensive,
extensive?
just remember, this is one way you can remember. Extensive, something extra. So it's not the course book.
Mhm.
The coursework. Intensive is their coursework, what they study in their coursework. So in their coursework, the audio, they have to learn top-down approach and bottom-up. So they have to learn the comprehension and also the words and the structure and everything. But extensive is like listening to music, watching movies, watching different videos or podcasts. It's not only for fun. It's not only for fun. They enjoy it, of course, but also they learn. They learn the language. They learn the intonation. They learn the tone. They learn the gestures. They learn even the many words. Well, we only focus on top-down approach. We only ask about comprehension. So what was that music about? Oh, really? What about that movie? Which one do you like most? Why do you like it? Can you tell me about the first actor? Which word did you like? So they start to talk about it. You help them to learn the language, and actually they enjoy it. So it's not always intensive, also extensive listening help them to learn better.
Mhm.
Is that clear to everyone?
Yeah.
Okay, how can we make our students to focus on listening? Number one is make it relevant to student. It should be interesting for your student. So there are some factors like their age, like their interests. So the very first step for your classes, know your students. If they're adolescents, you need to find something related to video games, music, sport, this kind of things. If there are housewives, so maybe you need to find something about cooking or home designing, something they enjoy it. If they're children, cartoons, dolls. So make it relevant and interesting to the student based on yourself. That how much, based on your student, I'm sorry, based on your students, how much you know your students. Otherwise, how can you find an interesting topic first for your students? Number two, provide background knowledge. So maybe in your coursebook, the listening is about a country, okay? Mexico, okay? Mexico City. They had no idea about Mexico City. So you need to provide background knowledge. So what can you do? You have to prepare pictures, short videos. Here is this country. This country is located in southern part of America, and look at the people, then play the audio. Otherwise, they wouldn't understand anything. So to help them focus better, we need to prepare pre-listening exercise. So it's not like, listen to this audio, then I ask you some questions, because it's very hard for students to focus. So it's better, we say, okay, you're going to listen to this audio. Here are the pictures. I want you to listen and order these pictures. Here are the questions. I want you to listen and answer to these questions. Or I want you to read sentences number 1 to 5, listen to the audio, then decide whether they're true or false. So in this way, they can focus better. And definitely, since we have different kinds of learners, you need to prepare a variety of activities, ordering pictures, answering to the questions, fill in the blanks, so different kinds, to work on bottom-up and top-down both. So sometimes you ask for lower level, especially you ask your students to listen and repeat, okay, listen and choose, follow, color, predict, guess, label, match, order, classify, different kinds of activities you can make for your students. And I suggest for each listening, you need to prepare different. Vianney, I'll come to you. Let me finish this sentence. So it's better different. It's not always just answer to the question. Once answer to the question, second time order it, then label it, then match it, just make it different. Yes, Vianney?
Thank you. The second point that said listening and discriminating. Could you please explain that one for me one
Sure.
more time?
Of
Thank you.
course. Of course. Guys, do you have any ideas what it means? Exactly.
Yeah.
So there are 3 stages for listening activities: pre-listening activities, while listening activities, and post-listening activities. Pre means prepare your students for the listening. While is practice the listening, top-down, bottom-up activities. Post, getting the feedback and recap. So 3 kinds of activities we need to prepare for the listening. We talked about top-down and bottom-up. So here are some examples. For top-down, the very first is put the setting, put the students in the context. Then they understand the topic. What is the topic? You can have brainstorming, you can talk about the topic. You can ask your students about the mood of the speakers. Listen and tell me, how do they feel? What's the main idea? Then you can stop it and say, can you predict what happened next? So they should have understood the first part to predict. Even they can judge it and say, oh, I agree with that part, but I don't like the second part. And then they start talking. Okay, and start talking. Detailed questions, comprehension questions. How much it is similar to their own situation? What would they do if they were in that situation? These are all top-down kinds of activities. For bottom-ups, you can work on a specific word, you can work on syllables, stress, word groups, or pronunciation, and structures. So the linguistic part. They can fill in the blanks. They can write down the words with the first syllable stress. They can put the words in the column with the similar pronunciation. These kind of activities. And even you can work on intonation. What do they mean when they say, that's Mary, isn't she? Or that's Mary, isn't she? So what's the difference? You can ask your students. So when the question rise or fall, well, what is the difference? So these kind of activities which related to the linguistic part goes for top-down strategies. Okay, that's all about the listening. You get the idea, but of course we have a webinar on how to write the lesson plan, I think in a week. Let's go to the speaking skill. When do you work on the speaking skills in your class?
Pretty much all the time.
Yeah, try to.
Exactly. From the beginning to the end, yes? From beginning to the end. That's right. So, we have different kinds of speaking activities in the class. One is monologue. So you give the topic to students, and so for next time, I want you to talk about traffic. I want you to talk about summer holidays. I want you to talk about seasons. So they plan and they come and talk. So there's no redundancy because they plan for it. Sometimes it's on plan. Okay, you have 3 minutes. We discuss this topic. You listen to the audio. You have 3 minutes to think about it and then compare it to your own life. So they only have 3 minutes. It's unplanned. Of course, there are more redundancy. What is it good for? What is it good for? When you
unplanned, you mean?
students to talk.
I'm sorry, did you ask a question about unplanned?
Yes.
That's like throwing the learners into the deep pool. So they get struggle to talk, and then they just find out if they can talk about their ideas, and then they're just they have to look for the words in their mind and the right grammar. So all the for speaking, they're practicing. That's unplanned, a good idea, because I had the same experience that they like this kind of experience because first of all, they are not stressed out before speaking, and when this is, as we said, unplanned, they are able to partly to talk about their ideas, which is a good practice for speaking.
Thank you, Zahra. Thank you very much. Anybody else wants to add anything? Okay. When we work in speaking in the class, we work on fluency and accuracy both. So who can tell me what's the difference between fluency and accuracy?
You can say.
Yeah, sure.
I don't want to give it to the solo speaker, but accuracy is about the right vocabulary, right grammar, right grammatical point. Fluency about the how, for example, how fast or how consistently they can talk. So that's the difference between fluency and accuracy. Because some of the people are accurate, but they are not fluent enough to just, for example, to just have a good pronunciation, to just have a contraction in their speaking, and so the pronunciation might be just work on it, and then they can start having how can I say, because in a sense it is, they can say it's, so they might be right on the grammar that it is for example a long way, but they can say it's a long way, to just to contract the words that are spoken.
Yes, please.
Thank you. Can fluency be just being able to transmit a message, just to communicate, even if it's not correct?
Exactly. That's it, Liani. Exactly. So fluency, the focus is on meaning. Means talking without hesitation, like children talking. They are very fluent, but are they accurate? No. But you understand that. So sometimes you work on their fluency, especially for lower levels. You work on fluency. Let them talk. Let them communicate. No matter it is wrong, but let them use what they have learned. Already, they listen to the audio. You practice the audio. You work everything about the audio. They did the exercises about the audio. So they have the knowledge. It's a part to produce, but they hesitate. You remember at the beginning, your friend said there are many students that they know the language, but they don't know how to produce it, so they never speak. Okay, so that's the part. Once you give them time to plan for it, for next session, so they have time to practice, they work on accuracy. Accuracy means correct form of the language, correct and proper vocabulary, correct and proper grammar, syntax, everything is correct, okay? Because they had time for it. And they practice on and on. They could be fluent too. But when unplanned, maybe they repeat one word 100 times. I think. That's fine. That's fine. Let them talk. Let them become fluent in the language. The other form of the speaking, the activities that you have in the class is dialogue. So sometimes they have, Zahra, I come to you. Sometimes they have interpersonal dialogue. Sometimes it's unfamiliar and sometimes it is familiar. They have the subject. You put them in a situation, said you are in the library, you want to talk about this book, or you want to borrow this book. So they have the subject and they plan for it. Sometimes it's unfamiliar. They said, okay, it's evening. It's Friday evening. Make a dialogue. So it's free. And you put them in pairs to practice. Yes, Zahra, what's your question?
I have a question about what I explained about fluency. So my understanding about fluency might be wrong then. If
No.
you
You
say
said
that
fluency means talking
accuracy
without.
is that
Yeah, I got what you mean. You said talking without hesitation. That's fine too. Without pauses. That's right.
not pauses, but because in school, the children learn how to say she is a student. So if they don't know that there's a contraction for he, she, and is, you can talk faster and more fluently. So, but I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but I add accuracy to the fluency as well, because I totally agree with you to let them talk as much as they can. But I had a question for you, that how about the accuracy? I know that it will happen, later on, but
Okay. Accuracy goes to the linguistic part of the language. So what you said, shiz, and instead of she is, correct form of it goes to accuracy. But maybe even they say, even maybe while they're talking and say she good. So it's wrong grammar, no accuracy, but they are fluent. Fluent means talking without hesitation and pauses. That goes to fluency. Well, whatever goes to grammar goes to, or linguistic goes to accuracy.
Yes. Yeah, I thought my understanding about fluency was a little bit wrong. But,
now you got the point?
That makes sense.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay. So what sub-skills of speaking we work in the class? Appropriacy, lexical and functional, so proper words. Even register comes here. How to talk to your teacher, talk formally, how to talk informally. So the way that you talk to your friend is very different than the way that they talk to their teacher or professor. You never say what to your professor. So that's the thing. We need to teach them. So we have formal speaking, informal and friendly speaking. What functions you use, okay? Accuracy, which works on the pronunciation and syntax. Fluency, we talk about it. Body language that we mentioned in the listening part is very important, very important. And readiness. Sometimes students, when they learn a language, they talk like recorded robots. So somebody talks, the other one just listens. And then it's your turn. And then the other one starts to talk. It's unnatural. So we have to work on the sounds. Oh, really interesting. Oh, what about that? That is natural talking. So when you ask them to prepare a dialogue, put it on the board. I don't want you to talk like robots. It's communication. So your body language is also matter. And the words and the sounds. One warm-up activities, and we talk about warm-up at the very beginning. Warm-up means prepare your student for speaking. You said you, actually, which is true, you practice speaking from the very beginning to the end. When they come from another culture, when they come from another language, for example, at home, they speak Chinese. When they come to the class, they need to they need to switch. So you need warm-up activities. Okay, so kind of game.
Word ball.
I'm sorry.
Nothing, I'm sorry.
No, you say something. Go ahead. That's fine.
I said about Wordwall, that the game, Wordwall for Warmup actually is really good. That we can ask this question in Wordwall, and that should be
Yeah.
fun too.
That's right. Daily activities you can talk. Okay, what's up? How was it? You know your student. So how was your match? How was your party? Or what happened at work? You had a meeting. So this kind of friendly activity which boosts the rapport of the class. And also this could be one. I want you to introduce one of your friends. So in your online classes, you put them in groups, in breakouts. And so I want you to ask about your friend's nickname, birthday, place of birth, family members, education, and hobbies. Any simple questions. You put them in breakouts and say you have only 2 minutes. And they talk together. When they come back to the hall, to the main hall, and say, okay, introduce your friend. And they say, okay, my friend is Maria. And she doesn't have a nickname. She was born in January. She was born in Portugal. And she has 2 brothers and 1 sister. And she's studying engineering. She loves swimming. So that's starting to talk. I said, wow, interesting. On the other hand, there's a very good bond with the students. They know each other and they feel more comfortable in the class. This could be one kind of warm-up activities. So, like listening, you have to prepare 3 kinds of activities for speaking. Pre-speaking activities, while speaking activities, and post-speaking activities. What does pre-speaking activity mean to you? What do you think?
Again, to make them ready about the subject, show them something, let them talk about that subject in pair or group works. We just need them to be ready for the topic of the speaking.
Thank you, Ida. Yes, Zahra, you raise hand.
Oh no, I didn't. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry.
Okay, no, that's fine. For pre, as Ida said, you need to prepare your students. So it's good to get familiar with the topic. The whole class together. So they get familiar with the topic. What's this topic about? What is this speaking about? Then later, for while, is the time that they have time to practice. So you put them in pairs and in groups. Goes to while. So in pre, they get the information. In while, they practice. And in post, they produce to the whole class. You get the feedback. What happened next? So you practice enough with the students, you get the feedback from the students, and you know they learn it. But they have to practice at home. That is what it's said, relevant homework. So in your lesson plan, you need to mention relevant homework. Why is that? If they don't practice what they have learned in the class at home, 55% they would forget. They would forget. It's very hard. This is very new to them. It's very hard to remember. So they need the relevant homework to practice at home. Pre could be elicitation. Anybody knows what elicitation means?
Just guessing?
Yeah, please do the guessing. Yeah. Oh, you would that was the meaning. I was thinking you asked, can I guess?
No, the meaning.
Yeah, I got you. So elicitation, it means you activate their background knowledge. Let me give you an example. The lesson is about it's about weather. Because elicitation, always teaching lower level is more difficult than higher level, because at higher level, everybody can speak the language. So in lower level, it's more difficult. Think about, you want to talk about weather. and kind of raining, snowing, I don't know, hot, cold, and these things. Mhm. But your students only knows hot and cold. They have no idea about seasons. They have no idea about different kinds of weather. So what you do, you want to put them in a context. So you start to ask questions about how do you feel? Do you think it's cold outside or it's hot? What about in August? Is it cold or hot? So they can answer. You activate their background knowledge. That is elicitation. Mhm. And you make connections between what they know and what they're gonna learn. This click helps them to learn better. That is elicitation. You as a teacher should know how to activate the background knowledge. So you need to study. I want to teach this dialogue what they have already learned about this. Do they have any ideas? If they don't have any ideas, I need to prepare a video or something so they understand the context. Another pre-speaking teaching activity could be picture talking. Look at the pictures. Usually books are pictorial, so they can look at the pictures and talk about the pictures. So can you guess what happened? What are they talking about? Who are they? Okay, let's listen and find out. Look at the dialogue and then listen to find out. Brainstorming, talking about the topic. The topic is about winter activities. So what can you do in winter? Guys, what do you do? What kind of entertainment you can have in winter in your city? So to start talking, that is brainstorming. Talking about the title. So the title is Alice in Jungle. So what do you think about the title? Who is Alice? How old is Alice? Why in jungle? Where is the jungle? So you get their attention and their curiosity. So let's find out. So that you help them to become interested in the topic. Okay? These are some examples for pre-teaching. Why? Practice. So they can interview each other. They can have a kind of game about it. They can discuss it. They can have role play. They can have oral dialogue journals and talk about it, monologue talking. But sometimes you want to work on a structure part of the speaking. So you put the phrases that you want them to use on the board and say, okay, I want you to talk about this dialogue, but use these phrases at the moment, recently, so far. So when I want you to use these phrases, like listening, we are not always working on comprehension. Also, they need to learn something. So they need to learn about the dialogue. You want to focus on the functions. So you put the functions on the board and say, while you are practicing, I want you to use these functions because they want to improve their speaking, right? They want to improve their speaking. So they have to use them while they're practicing. In practice time, it's a pair work time, group work time. It's a time students have together to practice. What is the role of the teacher? Monitoring. You have to go to breakouts, listen to them, and see if they're doing it right, if they need any help. For pose is a feedback time. So they produce, they role play the dialogue, they talk about it, and they use the vocabulary, function, grammar, pronunciation, and stress, intonation. You check everything. You check everything with your students, that everything is correct. What happened next? Relevant homework. So for next time, I want you to do this. I want you to watch this video and do this. session. So here is an example of why tonality is very important. Okay? Look here. I said, what do you understand when I read this sentence? My favorite sport is hockey. It's amazing. Now listen. My favorite sport is hockey. It's amazing. So which one has correct tonality?
Second one.
Yeah, that's a way. That's a natural way of talking. So while they're speaking, work on tonality. I like swimming, but I wish there were more places to swim where I live. So it shows you're sad about it. My favorite sport is hockey. You know, in Toronto, everybody loves hockey. Not me, but everybody loves hockey. My favorite sport is hockey. It's amazing. So amazing is not amazing. You know, tonality is, it's very important. And we need to practice with our students to sound natural. What are the challenges? We have different problems that Zahra actually mentioned some of them. Inhibition, they're worried of making mistakes, so they don't talk. They say, I don't have anything to say, or they don't want to participate. And also they use their mother tongue a lot. So what are your solutions? What do you do in each case?
So solution about the problems?
Yeah, what do you do?
Let's ask them to just to talk without, you know, I always ask them to just see themselves as a baby who is not afraid of anyone, who is not caring about the other person's judges. So I ask them to just, you know, that's the sentence I'm always asking it. Ask them to consider that, be proud of themselves, that they are here at this moment to just learn something new. So the most important problem is coming out of their fear, I mean, the comfort zone, to go to the fear zone. So they're always, you know, caring about the other person's judges. So the only thing that we can help them just not care about the other people's judges and just talk without being embarrassed.
Thank you.
So that's very hard. You know, this is important for them to just consider this. It's not embarrassing. It's an issue.
Yes, Vianney, what do you want to say? Go ahead.
Thank you very much. So if you in class notice that someone doesn't participate and you want the student to be involved and to take bravery and speak in the future, is that okay if you just say, for example, Jacqueline, what do you think about this? Like if you expose a student, even if you know that the student doesn't feel comfortable speaking in front of the class.
I will answer to this, but Ida wants to say something. Let me listen to Ida, then I'll come back and answer. Ida, what you want to say?
Yeah, I agree with Zahra, but I think it's easier said than done. You know, we say, don't worry, just talk, no problem. But anyway, some of them don't talk. They try to, you know, they're afraid of talking. So maybe putting them in smaller groups together make them a little bit easier. I don't know. Or the teachers, you know, attitude, maybe it's very important for them not to be afraid of talking. Mm, And the other one, which is important, you know, we as teachers try not to judge them, but other students, their classmates, maybe they do that. For example, if one of them says something wrong, others start laughing. And that part is really important to, you know, make them sure that it's okay. And other students not to do that. You know, I can, maybe it's hard for me to control myself, but it's hard for me to control others. So it's a very hard question. It doesn't have just one answer. Start talking.
Yeah.
Don't worry. I'm not going to judge
I'm
you.
sorry.
You know?
I'm sorry. That's you made a good point, but I meant that I was not trying to just give a solution, but your point is a really great one, because you made me think about the strategy, which is think per share. So first thing, and then pair with another student, as you said, and then share to the other.
Yeah.
With all
Thank
the
you.
students
So
in
you,
whole.
both of you mentioned
Exactly.
group work,
I agree with
pair
you.
working. Thank you. Thank you very much. Jacqueline, you want to say something, please?
Yeah, I'll just start my video here quick. I ran into this when I was teaching last year. I did adults, so I had a lady that was very not confident, not strong. Her natural personality was, just shy and everything. And I found that my patience was a virtue there, because I did a lot of one-on-one work with her, just visiting and drawing and writing. And I found we started in September and ended in June. I found by spring, March, April, she really started to come out of her shell. And
Oh,
and that to me was a win. I had sort of
yes,
set
of
as
course.
myself for an outcome for her for the year was to just get her comfortable in participating in the class. And yeah, so sometimes it's baby steps.
Bravo. Thank you. Yeah, that's a very good point, Jacqueline, that we need to put time for our students. That's right. That's right. Sometimes you have to, after the class, in your online classes, okay, I'm going to stay for 10 minutes. So then you talk specifically with that person. That was good that Jacqueline had a chance to go to went and talk in person to talk, but in your online classes, you can stay after your class for 10 minutes or send emails or something. That's very true. The other thing is using group work, so students feel more comfortable when they are practicing with their classmates, and make it easy for them. Sometimes they don't know the language, they don't know the words, so make it easy. First, prepare the words, the structures, everything for them, and said, okay, you can use this sample. So when they have the sample, it's easier for them to talk. And the topic is very important. You need to choose a topic to stimulate their interest. When they don't have any interest, when they don't have any knowledge, what can they talk about? It's very difficult. Even it's very difficult for us. You go to just imagine you go to a gathering that they have no idea about the topic. So what would happen? It would be silent. So if it's a part of your lesson that they have to listen, so you need to prepare something before. So you need to email them some information, so at least they had some ideas, or you ask them to Google something. So they have some ideas when they come to the class. Okay, you need to give them some instructions, and also training and discussion skills. So no matter you make mistakes, but I want you to first think about this question. I don't want you to share your personal experience right now. I want you to think about the definition. Did you Google it? What did you find? And say, yeah, I Googled that. And so, some people don't like to share their experience at the very beginning, but they can share the definition. So different types of questions for different kinds of people. That helps them to talk. Thank you very much. Now, actually, I want you, telling story also works. That's the storytelling that we're going to talk about it in our webinar for teaching English to students, telling how to tell stories and how to continue. That's a very good practice on speaking. Now, I want to share with you the Canvas page. So give me a minute, please. So here you go to modules, then you have to scroll down to here. After you need to study all the grammar part. Then it's on yourself. Okay, I just passed it, I guess. Yep. So here is methodology. This is methodology, first language, second language acquisition. Then it comes TESOL for language. Here, TESOL for language skills, listening and speaking. You click on it. So here is the definition. You have a very nice YouTube video talking about the 4 core English skills. And then it talks about listening, monologue, plan, unplan, and how to work top down and bottom up. And here is how to teach listening. We are going to talk about in another webinar in very detail how to write the lesson plan for a listening part. And bottom up activities, top down activities. Here are some examples for you. And here it talks about speaking, dialogue, monologue, and how to work on vocabulary and grammar, different exercises you can have, working on pronunciation, intonation. And here said, for example, even with one word, they can talk. So that is the matter. We always said in just increase the exposure of the language. Even with one word, you can communicate. So we can say, everybody listen, already, yes, no, why, through gestures. Even sometimes you don't know the first language. Maybe your students are from some countries that you don't know the first language. So we have to use our gestures and simple words. And talking about different conversation you can have even with one word. Works on pronunciation and stress. Okay, so this is a page which is related to today's webinar. What you are going to do so far is please study the grammar part, doing the activities, and go through the page for 4 skills. But up to here, you have to do the grammar part. Okay?
The grammar
Now's the
part
time
will
if
not
you
apply.
have any questions. Yes.